Welcome back to the Daily Deer. Today is day 26, January 26, 2025. And today's quote is Life on the Edge is where the wild things thrive by Jack O'Connor. Now, again, these episodes are just meant to get your mind into the deer woods and thinking about deer and stay present in the deer woods as much as possible year round. I am no expert. That's why this is a series from the okayest hunter and not the elitist hunter. But deer do feel safe in the edges. I think that was one of the first things I learned about deer hunting in general when we were scouting. I was scouting with my dad. Um, is like to look for these pinch point and edges, and that knowledge base expanded as I watched shows like The Hunting Public or THP, when they talked about like when all these different forms of vegetation come together and you see all these edges. And, I don't know why deer feel safe there if they just feel like they're covered in general, but where cover meets open ground, that is a transition point or zone. And it does offer things like food and safety. It breaks up their silhouette. And there's a lot of travel routes there that you'll notice and see and find. So those do make for some prime locations for observation sits and for hunting. Things I don't know about it are like, you know, depending how big the property is that you're hunting or how vast the areas that you're hunting. If you're hunting like the Shawanigan Nicolet National Forest, for example, those edges might be really hard to find. You'd have to really put a lot of effort into boots on the ground and exploring areas. If you have a small 20-acre plot that's private land, you might know exactly where your edges and transition points exist. And it's not to say that the property's holding deer, but if they're traveling through a corridor like that, it's a good area to key in on. This is very much, I think, at least in my opinion, or how I approach it, it's a 101 thing when it comes to deer hunting. It can get far more advanced if you're someone like Derek Melkor, who does the Dropping Pins podcast, or Greg Tubbs, who does this one, the Okayest Hunter podcast. And you've seen those two guys in and out of some of these daily deer episodes. They'll know a lot more. Greg knows a lot more about woodsmanship, and Derek hunts the Nicolet National Forest and is able to find really interesting pockets of edge type territory and terrain. But the tip is to look for the edge habitats where hardwoods meet fields and dense thickets border ridges. These are some of the more basic, easier to find examples of that. And deer use these areas to feed and to travel and, again, stay protected. If you can kind of key in on those areas, whether you have boots on the ground or doing some e-scouting, it's a good place to kind of start and work from. But the edge is where life happens. Hunt there, and you'll likely find some good deer sign. And again, I'm not an expert. I do value edges as well as water edges too. I've had most of my luck or success, whatever you want to call it, in river bottom areas. I love edges of water. Personally, that's where I've had most of my success. I don't know that that means it's right or wrong, but you got to find what works for you also. So don't be afraid to go exploring and trying new things and looking for things like edges and so forth. And edges aren't always so hard or harsh or hardwood to field. I think that's a lot of what people think of as like a hardwood edge or pines against a cornfield or something like that, or a bean field. That certainly is an edge. There's maybe things more like micro edges. Once you get into the woods, you'll see like, thick pricker bushes might butt up against a hardwood. That's an edge. Like there's going to be more edge type terrain and territory that you can discover and go investigate. And I think you'll always, not always, of course, but there's a good chance you'll find good deer sign in those areas. And once you find that deer sign, you can start to analyze, well, which direction are they predominantly heading from? What is the predominant wind here? Where do I think the bedding area is? Where is the food? You can start to kind of like work back from that. It's almost like when you do a puzzle, you start with your edges and then you work your way in. You find your edge pieces, you populate the whole edge of the puzzle, then you start to look at the picture and get it all kind of dialed in and find your clumpings of things that are like, similar, and so forth. So I think, the analogy here is if if you're treating hunting like a puzzle, which it kind of is, I think you would start with the edges, by and large. That's how I would approach an area first and foremost. Now, am I right? I have no idea. There's other hunters that are way more successful than me, way better, and actually understand these things. These are just talking points and things for you to consider. If you want to really listen to it, maybe we can get Derek to do an episode on it on the Dropping Pins podcast. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for following me into the deer woods today.